today's episode of Keto with Shana Batch Cooking, we're going to be making keto chili, keto lasagna, keto pumpkin muffins, and keto chicken Alfredo. So the first recipe I'm going to look at is the easy chili from the Southern Keto Cookbook. And now this cookbook is linked in the description box below, but it calls for 2 pounds of ground beef. I actually only used 1.25 pounds of ground beef. It also calls for 2 tablespoons of dried minced onions. I left those out just as a personal preference of mine. Also 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, 1 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, 1 14.5-ounce can of petite diced tomatoes, 1 cup of water, 2 tablespoons chili powder, 1 tablespoon of ground cumin, a half a teaspoon of salt, and then half a teaspoon of black pepper, which I also left out of the recipe based on my personal preferences. So what we're going to do first as we make our easy chili is we're going to brown the ground beef. And at this point, you would add onions if you're using them, as well as the minced garlic. So crumble that all up with a large spoon and make sure it's nice and brown. And of course, you want to drain the fat at the very end. It takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes to complete this part. Then we're going to add the other ingredients to our stock pot. So add your tomato sauce. I chose the Hunt's tomato sauce based on the macros. Also tomatoes. I picked the Kroger diced petite tomatoes because of the macros as well. And then you want to add a cup of water. You want to add 2 tablespoons of chili powder, then 1 tablespoon of ground cumin, and a half a teaspoon of salt. And if you choose to add pepper, this would be the time. Bring to a boil, then reduce the heat to low and let it simmer for roughly 20 minutes to allow the flavors to develop and the chili to thicken slightly. And let me tell you, my family loves this chili. So the next recipe we're going to be looking at is our keto lasagna. What you're going to need is 1 pound of cooked ground beef, 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, keto approved pasta sauce, 2 bricks of cream cheese, a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 4 large eggs, 2 cups of cottage cheese, 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, 2 cups of shredded mozzarella cheese. So after you've browned your ground beef and you've put in your minced garlic, what you want to do is dump in your pasta sauce. Now it needs to be some sort of keto approved pasta sauce that has very low carbs. This particular one was one I found in my store that wasn't breaking the bank, but also had a great carb count, plus it had good ingredients. Time to make our keto noodles. You're going to take your 2 bricks of cream cheese and soften them. Add a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, and then finally we'll add our 4 eggs. Mix together until nice and smooth. You're going to need 2 9x13 dishes. Make sure you spray them down. Then you're going to divide the batter into 2 equal portions, 1 in each. Finally, put both of these in the oven at 350 for roughly 12 to 15 minutes, and this will be your noodle. Now that the noodles are complete, now it's time to put together your lasagna. So take one of your pans, and then you're going to take your meat, and you're going to use half of it in that first pan. Spread it nice and evenly around that pan and on top of the first noodle. Now we're going to add half of our cottage cheese, roughly a cup. It depends on your family how much you want to include on this. So what you'll do is you'll put it over throughout the meat and then spread it across evenly. Next, we're going to take a cup of shredded cheddar cheese and spread it all around the top. Then we'll take a cup of mozzarella cheese and do just the same thing. That is our first layer of our lasagna. Next, we are going to move our second noodle over to our top layer of our lasagna. Now, as you can tell, this was not easy to do, holding a camera with one hand and trying to scoop this with the next. But it's easier if you divide it up into smaller sections and scoop and move over. Now it's time to do our second layer of our lasagna. So you want to make sure that you add that other half of the meat. Then you're going to put on another cup of cottage cheese. Then you will add another cup of shredded cheddar cheese and another cup of shredded mozzarella cheese. So now you have 2 layers of your lasagna. If you're planning on eating it right away, remember the meat is already warm. So what you want to do is put it in the oven at 350 until the cheese is melted and it's golden brown. But if you did what I did and I put it in the refrigerator for a later date, and when I pulled it out, you want to make sure you put it in the oven for about 30 to 35 minutes at 400. And feel free to cover it at the beginning and halfway through, take it out and uncover it so we don't get anything too burnt. This next recipe is a sweet treat and one of my favorite keto recipes. What you're going to need is a half a cup of softened butter, 2/3 cup plus 1 tablespoon of sweetener, 4 large eggs, 3/4 cup of pumpkin puree, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1.5 cups of almond flour, a half a cup of coconut flour, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of pumpkin spice, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 8 ounces of cream cheese. As we get started here, make sure you have preheated your oven to 350 degrees and you have lined your muffin tin. Now we're going to take a large mixing bowl and use our softened butter and 2/3 cup of sweetener and mix them together until they're light and fluffy. Next, add your eggs and mix them. Finally, we're going to add our pumpkin and our vanilla, and we'll mix that all together till it's nice and smooth. Now we're going to take all of our dry ingredients and put them together in a separate bowl. So you'll stir up the almond flour, coconut flour, baking powder, and pumpkin spice, as well as the salt. Mix it all together before you add it to the wet ingredients. Add the dry ingredients to the wet and be sure to stir it up until it's nice and smooth. Now it's time to divide the batter evenly into muffin cups. Although the recipe said for 12, I easily filled 15. So now we're going to grab another mixing bowl because we're going to make our cream cheese topping. So the recipe calls for 8 ounces of softened cream cheese plus 1 tablespoon of sweetener. I also added some ground cinnamon for a little bit of taste. And then once you stir those up, you're going to add them to the top of each muffin. Now, as you can see, I just put a dollop on each of the muffins. However, you can take a knife or toothpick and stir it into the pumpkin batter to make it more of a mixture. Finally, we're going to bake these muffins for 20 to 25 minutes on 350. So I have to tell you, these pumpkin muffins were absolutely delicious. They were light and fluffy, and they were so yummy. My husband definitely loved them, and they're one of my favorite keto treats. Our final meal today is going to be Keto Chicken Alfredo. You're going to need cut up chicken tenderloins, 2 tablespoons of butter, 3 ounces of cream cheese, 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, 2 ounces of Parmesan cheese, 1 large egg yolk, a pinch of pepper, a pinch of salt, and a pinch of nutmeg. All right, so what you want to do is grab some chicken tenderloins like the Heritage Farm brand that I have right here. Once you get it home, we're going to open up the package and pull out each piece of chicken and cut them up into bite-sized pieces that are perfect for our chicken Alfredo. Cook your chicken until there's no longer pink, and right now is the time to add any type of seasonings like salt and pepper or another type of seasoning that you like. Now it's time to make our Alfredo sauce. So we're going to start out by using 2 tablespoons of butter and have it melt in the pot. You also want to add your 3 ounces of cream cheese. Stir those together until they're well melted. Next, you want to add 1 cup of heavy whipping cream as well as 2 ounces of Parmesan cheese. But be sure to add a little bit at a time and stir them up until they're completely mixed in. Once it's all stirred together, go ahead and add that one large egg yolk and mix it up. The last thing you want to add is some salt, just a pinch of pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg. And then make sure you stir it all up. Now you just add the chicken to your Alfredo sauce and you are ready to go. Now again, you are welcome to start eating it right then and there, or you can stick it in the fridge like I did and save it for a later date. Just stick it in the oven at about 350 for 20 to 30 minutes until it's nice and bubbly and warm. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and be sure to hit all so you don't miss a single keto video.